When Liam Walker walked down the weathered path near Seabrook's Marina that rainy evening, he wasn't looking for hope. He was looking for shelter, and maybe a few dollars from the fish he'd managed to catch that day. The wind had calmed after the storm, but the town still smelled like salt, rain, and rusted dreams. Liam, a single father barely holding things together, was soaked to the bone, his boots muddy, and the old tackle box in his hand felt heavier than usual. But that night, something strange caught his eye near the far end of the marina. A massive yacht, long forgotten, sitting like a sleeping giant in the shadows. It wasn't there yesterday. That, he was sure of. Its once white sides were streaked with grime. Barnacles clung to its hull like scars, and the sails flapped torn and lifeless. It looked abandoned, like it had been left behind, just like Liam felt most days, since his wife died 3 years ago. He stepped closer, curious. The name carved into its side was barely visible, Alien Wind. He ran his hand over the faded lettering, his fingers brushing against chipped paint, and memories he hadn't let himself feel in years. Before life fell apart, before the funeral and food stamps, Liam had been a boat mechanic, a good one. He knew every knot, every motor sound, every kind of wood used to keep a vessel like this alive. He stood there in the fading light, the sound of seagulls and his own thoughts echoing in his head. Maybe I could fix it, he whispered. Sell it, or live in it. He chuckled softly at the last part. His apartment barely had heat. The yacht, even wrecked, felt more solid than anything he had now, and so it began. Every spare minute, Liam wasn't working odd jobs, fixing lawnmowers, painting sheds, helping tourists launch kayaks. He was on that yacht. His 2 kids, Ava and Jonah, were right there with him. They sanded the railings, swept out cobwebs, and helped pull splinters from each other's fingers. They laughed more than they had in years. Slowly, painfully, the yacht began to look like a home. It wasn't just wood and bolts anymore. It was a project, a purpose, and for Liam, it became something else. It was the one thing in his life he could fix without it falling apart. The townsfolk didn't understand. Waste of time, old Mr. Halley from the bait shop muttered. That yacht belongs to some rich ghost. You're messing with trouble. But Liam kept going. He had nothing else to lose. Then, just when the Alien Wind looked like herself again, polished rails, sails that finally caught the breeze, and a warm glow from the tiny cabin at night, a black car rolled up to the edge of the marina. Liam noticed it right away. Nobody in Seabrook drove cars like that. Out stepped a woman. Her heels clicked against the dock. Her long coat swayed with the breeze, and she wore sunglasses even though the sun had already dipped below the waterline. She looked like she belonged in New York, not in a town where people still paid for gas in coins. Everyone turned to look. Liam just kept wiping his hands on an old rag, not knowing that in the next 5 minutes, his life would turn upside down. She stood at the edge of the dock, staring at the yacht. No emotion, no words, just staring. Liam finally stepped forward. Can I help you? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned every inch of the boat. Then she looked straight at him. Who fixed this? He hesitated. I did, with my kids. It looked like it was falling apart. She raised an eyebrow. It was mine. Is mine, inherited it. Forgot it, even existed. A silence fell between them. The breeze picked up, lifting a corner of her coat. Ava peeked from behind the cabin, waving shyly. Jonah followed with a toothy grin. The woman's gaze softened, just a little. You did all this? With your children? Liam nodded. We had nothing else to do. This boat gave us something to hold on to. The woman stepped onto the deck without asking. Liam watched her walk the length of it, her heels clicking against the freshly cleaned wood. She touched the restored railings, the neatly tied ropes, the smooth varnished cabin door. Everything he had done. She noticed it all. Finally, she turned to him. My name is Isabella Ray Laurent. The name meant nothing to him, but it would later. She was one of the youngest tech billionaires in the world. A woman raised by luxury, tempered by business, and untouched by real, ordinary struggle. And yet she kept returning. Every day that week, Isabella came back to the yacht, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with questions. She asked about his life, about Ava's favorite book, about how Jonah learned to tie sailors' knots. Liam didn't know what to make of her. She never looked down on him, never flaunted anything. She just watched and listened. He learned things too, that she'd built her company from the ground up, but now sat in rooms full of people who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. That money didn't protect her from loneliness. That this yacht was the last real thing her grandfather ever gave her. Then one night, after the kids had gone below deck, and the stars reflected on the quiet water like broken glass, Isabella turned to him. Would you consider marrying me? Liam froze. He blinked. Surely he'd misheard. She smiled, almost nervously. No contracts, no business deals, just a woman asking a man who fixed something she forgot she needed. And right then, Liam had no words. Only the sound of his heart pounding, the smell of sea salt in the air, and the quiet voice inside him whispering that nothing about this made sense. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to. And in that moment he had no idea the storm that was about to come. Next, Liam didn't sleep that night. He sat on the deck long after Isabella had gone, staring at the waves, the stars, the silent marina. Her question hung in the air like sea mist. Would you consider marrying me? He wasn't the kind of man who got asked questions like that. He fixed boats. He packed school lunches. He taught his kids how to stretch a meal into two. What would someone like Isabella Ray Laurent want with a man like him? He tried to shake it off, but he couldn't. Every time he looked at the yacht, now glowing softly in the moonlight, he thought of her. The way she'd looked at the kids like they mattered. The way she'd touched the railing he had sanded. For hours. The way her voice had cracked slightly when she said she had no real friends in her world. Only followers and investors. The next morning, he found a letter folded and tucked beneath the coil of rope near the helm. Her handwriting was small, sharp, and careful. If you say no, I'll understand. But I want you to know. No one's ever fixed anything for me before. Not like this. Not with love. Isabella. Liam folded the letter, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and stared at the horizon. He didn't need time to think. He needed to talk to his kids. That evening, they sat together on the deck, eating grilled cheese and tomato soup from old mismatched bowls. Liam looked at Ava and Jonah, then cleared his throat. You guys like Isabella, right? Ava smiled, swinging her legs over the edge of the bench. She brought me that big art set, remember? Jonah nodded. And cookies. Good ones. She smells nice too, Ava added with a giggle. Liam laughed, but then his face turned serious. She asked me something. Something big. The kids leaned in wide-eyed. She asked if I'd marry her. Jonah blinked like, be her husband. Liam nodded slowly. Ava grinned. That means she'd be our stepmom, right? He hesitated. Yeah, something like that. Ava and Jonah looked at each other, then at him. Can she live with us? On the boat? Jonah asked. Liam chuckled again. Maybe. If she wants to, but it wasn't that simple. Because nothing ever was. News of Isabella's visits to Seabrook started to spread. A yacht that had sat untouched for years was now gleaming. A billionaire, always in the news for tech deals and award speeches, was suddenly spending time in a sleepy coastal town with a man who wore the same boots every day. Paparazzi showed up first. Then came the reporters. They asked questions Liam didn't know how to answer. Is it true you're dating Isabella Laurent? What's your opinion on her company's future merger? Are you planning to move to New York? One reporter shoved a mic in Liam's face outside the local store. Did she really propose to you? Liam didn't answer. He just pushed his cart forward, gripping it like a lifeline. Isabella tried to shield him from the noise. She told her team to back off. She cancelled the press tour to spend more time on the yacht. But the pressure built like waves before a storm. Her advisors panicked. This relationship could hurt your credibility, one warned her. The public doesn't relate to a romance with a struggling single dad on a boat. Do a photo op, another suggested. Give him a reward for fixing the yacht and walk away. That's the cleanest move. But Isabella refused. He's not a campaign. He's not an image. He's a man, and I care about him, she snapped. Still, she flew back to the city one morning without saying goodbye. Liam came to the dock that afternoon and found the yacht empty, the wind flapping the sails loosely. A deep ache settled in his chest. He'd been right all along. She came from a different world, and people from her world didn't stay. He tried to move on. Focus on the kids. Work a few jobs. Patch a few leaky boats. But every corner of the yacht reminded him of her. The polished table she admired. The drawer where she left extra tea bags. The step she'd almost tripped over that first day. Then he found the letter. It was tucked in the cabin drawer, next to the first aid kit. This time, her handwriting was shakier. I left because they made me feel like loving you was a mistake. But I know it's not. I just don't know if I'm strong enough to fight them all. If you feel the same, come find me. If you don't, just know you've fixed something in me. No one else ever has. He didn't hesitate. He pulled out the only suit he owned, one his brother wore to his own wedding, now hanging in a dusty corner of the closet. He carved a small wooden box from the scraps of the Allian Wind, the same boat that brought her to him. Inside, he placed a simple ring, shaped by his own hands. 2 days later, Isabella stood in front of a massive crowd in a glass skyscraper in New York. She wore a dark blazer, her hair pinned back, the bright lights of 1,000 cameras trained on her. The company board watched from the front row. Behind them, news outlets streamed the event live to millions. She stepped to the podium, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the mic. Then the doors opened at the back of the hall. Every head turned. There he was, Liam, in his old suit, his boots still muddy from the docks, carrying a small wooden box. He didn't stop at the back. He walked straight down the center aisle, every step slow and certain. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones clicked, but Isabella saw none of it. She only saw him, and just before she could speak, Liam opened the box and held it out to her. "I don't know a thing about boardrooms," he said, "but I know you. I know you're kind, and you're tired, and you're brave enough to ask a man like me to marry you." The crowd held its breath. "And now, I'm asking you." And before she could answer, the cameras flashed, but it wasn't about them anymore. The only thing left was her answer. And, in that moment, the whole world waited. Isabella stared at Liam, her breath caught somewhere between shock and awe. She had stood on hundreds of stages before, delivering speeches to investors, launching products, leading billion-dollar companies. But she had never felt this vulnerable, never felt so seen. The crowd was whispering, now some confused, others smiling, many stunned, but Isabella wasn't hearing any of it. All she saw was the man in front of her, the man who brought her yacht back to life, the man who raised 2 kids with everything he had, even when he had almost nothing, the man who carved a ring from wood instead of gold. And suddenly, her answer felt like the most obvious thing in the world. She stepped down from the stage, her heels clicking across the marble floor as she walked toward him. Cameras followed every move, but she didn't care. She reached him, her eyes shining with emotion, and placed her hand over the wooden box. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times. "Yes." The room erupted. Not with applause, not with noise, but with a kind of silence that felt holy. And in the quiet, Isabella slipped the carved ring onto her finger, tears in her eyes, and the smallest smile on her face. Liam pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in a long time, the weight he carried seemed to lift. Back in Seabrook, things changed. Not overnight, but slowly, meaningfully. The press stayed for a while, digging into Liam's past, taking pictures of the kids on the dock, trying to stir up scandal. But there was none. Just a man and a woman, choosing each other in a world that didn't understand them. Eventually, the noise faded. The cameras left, and all that remained was life, real, simple life. Liam didn't move to a mansion. Isabella didn't give up her ambition. Instead, they built a life around the Allian Wind, turning the yacht into a floating classroom for kids who needed direction. Together, they launched a program called Harbor Hearts, giving struggling families a chance to learn sailing, mechanics, even coding, something for everyone. Ava discovered a love for photography. Jonah grew obsessed with navigation. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were growing. There was a moment, months later, when a man in a pressed suit arrived at the dock. He introduced himself as the kid's uncle again, this time with even more polished papers and a new story. Liam tensed, but Isabella stepped forward, calm and clear. "We know who they belong to," she said gently, holding both children close. The man left without another word. One night, a storm rolled in, the kind that brought back memories. Wind, rain, the kind of thunder that rattled bones. Liam stood at the wheel, while Isabella gathered life vests. They worked without words, their movements in sync, guiding the boat through the rough water. It wasn't fear this time. It was strength. Trust. They had been through worse. When the sky cleared, the kids came out from below deck, cheering. The sails caught the wind again, and the yacht moved forward like it always had, steady and proud. Years passed. Ava grew into a bold young woman, capturing life through a camera lens. Jonah became quiet and brilliant, always drawing maps and asking questions about the stars. Liam's hair turned silver at the edges. Isabella still wore sharp glasses, but now paired them with windbreakers and messy ponytails. They anchored the yacht in a small harbor one evening. The sun dipped low over the water, and everything was gold and still. Liam sat with Isabella on the deck, her hand resting on his. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly. She looked at him. Regret what? Walking away from everything. For this, she smiled. Liam, this is everything. And he believed her. As the water lapped against the hull, and the kids laughed in the background, the story that began with a broken yacht and a broken-hearted man found its ending not in fame but in quiet love, shared purpose, and a family that chose each other over and over again. Because sometimes, fixing what's broken doesn't just change the thing you're working on, it changes you. And sometimes, the biggest risks don't come with guarantees, but they come with hope. And for Liam and Isabella, that was enough. More than enough.